A lot of what is in my mind is images from where I grew up. So I grew up in a mission community in Kenya.
Okay.
That was similar environment to what I imagine PNG is going to be like. I'll probably start by riding my motorcycle 2 miles to the airport, doing your pre-flight and getting ready to go fly to whatever route you've got for that day. It's a little bit of everything in PNG. The very controlled aviation environment that's kind of normal here in the States, but then you've got the other side where you're flying into these grass, really short, steep, mountainous airstrips into a village that, has no other means of staying connected with the rest of society.
Well, good morning, Caleb. Welcome to Uncharted.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Part of what is Uncharted for you is where you're going. And that could be days and weeks from now. You're going to launch to Papua New Guinea.
Yep.
So you've heard stories, you've talked to missionaries that have been there. You haven't, correct?
I have not been there yet.
Okay. So help myself and the listeners visualize what you think you're going to be, what it's going to be like the day you land. Mm-hmm. Where is it? What are you preparing for? What are you visualizing? Help us to see that.
Yeah. A lot of what is in my mind is images from where I grew up. So I grew up in a mission community in Kenya.
Okay.
That was similar environment to what I imagine PNG is going to be like. It was equatorial, up in the mountains, so as far as temperature and climate, fairly similar from what I understand Ukarumpa is in PNG.
And Ukarumpa is the area, the mission base.
The main base.
Okay.
And I was growing up at a mission station where you had a school, a hospital, tons of missionary families. And so the community there too was similar from what I understand to Ukarumpa. So that's kind of the framework that a lot of my mental images come from. Is I envision myself getting to Ukarumpa, hoping that it ends up being similar to how I grew up. I hope that'll give me an advantage for the transition to a completely new environment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And God does use our past to as building blocks for what's in the future. But that will be a great podcast to follow up. We'll say, how similar was it? When you come back for recurrent training or something.
Did your expectations meet the reality?
That's right. So you grew up as an MK.
I did, yeah.
On a mission center where pretty much self-sustaining with a school clinic, and that sounds very similar to where you'll be serving on the other side of the map in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, and obviously, like the cultural environment is going to be a lot different, just from the sense that I don't know the language. The people have a different culture than in Kenya. And so a lot of those things are what I'm excited to be learning about, but I'm sure the type of food and the way they dress and just the way they interact socially, I'm sure a lot of those things will be fun and difficult to learn about once I get there.
There's going to be cross-cultural changes, cross-cultural dynamics, language challenges. I was reading a blog this morning from a missionary in PNG, and they were saying one of the things they weren't prepared for is saying hello and goodbye to so many friends as they come and go. So what are some of those dynamics for? It sounds like you grew up in a mission family, so this must be part of the family business. So maybe not as an unknown for you saying goodbye to family and friends as you get ready to go. But help the listeners understand what's that feel like? Yeah,
kind of like you said, I consider that one of God's many blessings in my life is just coming from that sort of background, like and having a family that is very supportive of me and my desire to pursue missions. So.
Which is not a given.
Which is not a given for sure. But like my older sister was in China for 5 years. And, especially during that time, there was times at which our family was on 3 separate continents.
Wow.
And it was like 5 different time zones between the 7 of us and the family.
Wow.
So my family is kind of used to it. And even though it's certainly still not going to be easy. It's just part of life in our family. So it's been a huge blessing from that sense to have a family that is supportive and is willing to adapt to living in very remote and far separated places.
Yeah, and lots of distance.
Yeah. But obviously, it's still going to be hard, like saying goodbyes to all the family and friends that I have all over the States here. There's a lot of really good relationships that I have that, again, goodbyes are just kind of normal in a sense.
Yeah, so walk us through between now and launch, what's left?
So the next several weeks, I'm going to be doing Kodiak training. That's the airplane that'll be flying in PNG. So we'll have one here, and I'll be able to do maintenance and flight courses on that. And that's kind of the main training left. Aside from that, there's a lot of packing, all the goodbyes and final preparation and such before moving over. So I've just recently come off of a lot of training this past spring and summer, doing things like the intercultural communications course that JAARS had.
So that's courses here on the JAARS Center.
Yep. It focuses on learning how to be able to interact and transition to a culture which is different than your own. So specifically, how to manage conflict in relationships when there's cross-cultural dynamics to that. It
sounds like that's a good class for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think anybody, especially like with how international, just it's a mixing pot here in the States nowadays for just how many cultures you have interacting. So it can be a great class, and it focuses a lot on spiritual vitality as well. So for any Christian, being able to live and interact in their world. Yeah. So some of the other, I guess you could call them electives, were I did the 4-wheel drive class here at JAARS, as well as the motorcycle and water safety classes too. There was a Concilium offered a safety
security.
Safety and security class. So that was how to deal with if you get kidnapped or carjacked or are in those type of situations, particularly in maybe more hostile environments overseas. The biggest chunk was obviously the primary reason I was here, the pre-field orientation training that JAARS offers, which was 4 months of flight and maintenance related training.
I want to highlight the land and maritime training you have that you participate in, because that is one of the uniquenesses of JAARS, right? There's mission aviation organizations out there that provide some of the advanced training that JAARS does, but very few work across all modes of transportation, like 4-wheel drives, motorcycles, boats. And so, that's a course that not everybody has grown up with a 4-wheel drive or manual transmission. So tell us a little bit about what that course was like for you.
I was actually quite excited to see the off-roading course that we've got back in the woods here at JAARS, because growing up overseas, even though I didn't really do any driving in Kenya, you can't get your license till you're 18. And by the time I was 18, I was back shipping out for college.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really do much driving in Kenya with stick shift and off-road and mud and dirt,
right.
And, all those types of environments. So coming here and being able to see that JAARS is able to maintain a very realistic off-road course to be able to do training in 4-wheel drive vehicles with stick shift, it was encouraging to see that. My experience growing up was mostly on dirt bikes, because
I was going to say
it was by far the fastest mode of transportation, and for a kid, it was a great activity to go on a ride. And
yeah, I'm sure fast is relative to your age.
Yeah,
way faster than I would go or you would go today, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So doing the motorcycle course was that was more down my alley of what I've experienced overseas.
Right. We last year we had 3 of our pilots within 6 weeks experience motorcycle accidents, and that's one of the reasons we're really emphasizing that our safety teams, when they go out and do audits, we're realizing that more of our pilots and mechanics are injured getting to the hangar than after getting or working around the aircraft. And And it's just a reality that we have to deal with, and we really want to make our training relevant to all modes of transportation. And I'm glad to hear you got to experience some of that.
Yeah. It has been cool being here at JAARS headquarters to see the ways in which the motorcycle training and the water safety training are used worldwide. Yeah. And to be able to see that, even though most people think of JAARS, they probably think of aviation.
Right.
But there's a lot of other ways in which we're involved in.
Yeah, we are an aviation mission, but we do work across all modes of transportation. Mm-hmm. We're looking forward to getting some land and maritime guys on our podcast as well, because we're excited to do that.
That'd be great.
Tell us a little bit about some of the preparation that brought you here. You had a period of time where you were actually an instructor, a flight instructor at SMAT. Tell us a little bit about that phase of preparation and how God is using or has used.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty much when I was in Kenya in high school, the three top schools that you would hear of from other missionaries as far as mission aviation goes were SMAT, LeTourneau, and Moody. And so those were the three that I applied to for college, and I ended up going the SMAT route. So SMAT stands for School of Missionary Aviation Technology. I went there for both their 1-year maintenance course as well as their 1-year flight program.
Okay, so you are a pilot mechanic coming in.
Yes, so I'm a pilot mechanic coming in. And then after having finished the courses there, I did return as a flight instructor and was there for about 3.5 years training other pilots, many of whom are actually now here at JAARS as well.
That's awesome.
So it was interesting during pre-field orientation to have 5 of the 10 in orientation be SMAT graduates. And of those, obviously I was one of them. And so of the other 4, 2 of them had been previous students of mine.
That's really interesting. It's an interesting dynamic, and you got to experience it, had the privilege of experiencing it early on, where in missions, at one point you're the pilot, the next you're the chief pilot, now the boss over that. And then maybe on next term, you'll be back as a pilot and somebody will be the director of aviation. And so people in the commercial world and in industry, when they look in at missions, they really find that an interesting dynamic. And literally your first weeks and months with us, you were experiencing that dynamic where you could be a boss of somebody that used to be your boss, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's cool seeing just in a sense, the many generations of instructor and student that you have. Because Neil Dubois, one of the other instructors here at JAARS, was my instructor at SMAT, and then I worked with him at SMAT, and now I'm working with him down here at JAARS, and there's people that both of us taught that are working with us too. So it's cool to see how aviation is just a unique environment where you both get to work with the people that were once under you, and maybe someday I'll be.
Well, I think it fits our philosophy that, professionalism and lifelong learners. Mm-hmm. We can learn from those around us, beside us, above us, below us, and you had a chance to demonstrate that early on. How did your students do in PFO?
As far as I know, they did well too.
They made it through.
Yeah,
I'm sure that makes you feel good as well.
Definitely proud to see them and their journeys as well.
So you mentioned in Kenya you heard about Moody and SMAT and LeTourneau. Mm-hmm. So there must have been a pretty robust mission aviation community there. Tell us a little bit about how that works and what visibility you had into that. I'm sure that planted some seeds to bring you full circle today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents were with Africa Inland Mission, and AIM has their own aviation branch, AMAIR. And so that was most of my exposure because AMAIR's headquarters was in Nairobi, and we were just outside of Nairobi in some of the more rural areas. And so being close to the hangar there, I was able to have some opportunities to interact with a lot of the AMAIR pilots. Those were my main contacts to telling me about some of the colleges that were
feeder schools into missions or whatever.
That had a good reputation for going into missions. And so a lot of those exposures were, some very formative memories as well. Like I remember I was able to fly around with AIM Air throughout northern Kenya for a week when I was an 11th grader. And just being able to experience missionary aviation like that firsthand, and to be able to fly into some of these remote strips that they use, and to be able to see the work that's being done in the churches there among these remote communities. Right. That was really cool. It was an opportunity that most people never get.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Growing up next to a game park and then seeing a remote village as a junior in high school. It's just worlds apart from a lot of our podcast listeners.
Yeah.
So that you really feel that was formative and fundamental to your call into mission aviation.
Yeah. And really, as far as I can tell, one of the AIM Air pilots that was good family friends of ours was probably the one who got me interested in missionary aviation, just because as a kid, he was probably the only exposure I had to it. And I was about 5 or 6 years old when I decided that I wanted to be a missionary pilot.
No kidding.
So it's been great seeing God put that calling in my life and then confirm it throughout the years and continue guiding me down this path.
Yeah. Wow. God does speak in a still small voice, like he called Samuel at a young age. And oftentimes in our busyness, we don't hear it. But what a testimony that from that young, God has already planted those seeds and has been faithful to equip and provide you opportunities along the way.
Yeah.
The scriptures say he equips those he calls. And from a flight instructor at SMAT to all the transportation, air, land, and sea training, ICC training here at JAARS, preparing you to go. But part of going, we touched on it a little bit, is all the preparation and packing. So there's emotional packing, saying goodbye to your family and friends. Yeah. Spiritually, going through ICC, spiritual vitality. But just help us understand a little bit, maybe physically, what do you put in a suitcase? You get a 50-pound bag, and you have to pay extra for the second bag. But what are you packing, and how are you preparing? What are you taking with you? What can you buy there? Or
thankfully, there are a lot of things that you are able to get either in Ukarumpa, or you can have certain appliances purchased in Australia and then have them shipped to Ukarumpa. So that takes at least a little of the stress off.
And I understand there's a little store or commissary on the
like for probably most of the everyday household needs.
Yeah, SpaghettiOs and ravioli or whatever your favorite.
Yeah, I don't know if they have that, but So I'd say some of the things that certainly have been weighing on me as far as trying to figure out some of the details are things like a water filter. What type of filtration system are you going to get? Because most of the houses collect rainwater off the roofs, which for the most part is probably safe to drink. But if it's been sitting in a collection bucket for a month, there might be some bacteria growing in it. So what are you going to use for filtration? What are appliances that you're going to use that you might not need but might be really handy to have? Because most appliances that run on electricity, 110 here in the States, it's 220 over there.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out those details, what's necessary, and do you want to
the warranty is void when you take it outside the U.S. or whatever.
Yeah. Thankfully I'm a guy, so I don't need like a hair dryer or something like that. But so figuring out a lot of those things is one of the biggest stresses. Obviously, packing enough clothes so that you can go over there and know that after a 3-year term in an environment that's a little bit more harsh on clothes, you're hanging clothes out to dry on the clothesline, and
no washers, no dryers.
On the sun there certainly does a lot of work on your shirts when they're hanging out there on the clothesline all the time. They wear out faster.
One of the services that we provide at JAARS is shipping and receiving. We ship containers, and I know we ship and DHL to PNG. Are you taking advantage of that, or are you carrying everything in a suitcase?
Yeah, I'm taking advantage of that, and so I'll have several foot lockers worth of stuff that I'll be sending through shipping.
How long will that take? Do you know?
So the shipment will probably leave in October, and I think it'll take 2 or 3 months after it's left shipping.
So you'll be in country before you're.
Yeah, so those are a lot of things. A lot of things I'm sending on that are going to be longer term items, things that I don't need right away, but would be nice to have them. So, like for example, some tools and books. Yeah. Eventually, it'll be nice to have a bookshelf set up in my house that's stocked with books, but I don't need that right away. It's not like
that makes sense.
Go through those every day. So, some longer term items are what's getting shipped. And I remember it's a huge blessing to have JAARS shipping and receiving right here at headquarters, because I remember as a kid, my dad figured out how to ship a crate for us over to Kenya, and I wasn't very aware of what all that hassle was for him, but being able to just do it really simply through an in-house shipping and receiving department, it's been a huge blessing.
This reminds me of our family leaving for overseas. We were half an hour from the airport when the towers came down in 2001. And that
would have been about the same time that my parents went.
Weeks went by, and so finally when we were free to leave the country, they went through every box. And so anything with a power cord or electric was taken out. So we left the country with nothing electrical.
Wow.
But yeah, those days are cemented in my mind. And so
they had electricity back then?
Yeah, that's right. Nice. We'll edit that one out.
Okay.
But, no, that's awesome. Yeah. 25 years ago. So, so whenever I see a young pilot mechanic of a young family going, I always think about that packing and what you think you can take and what you need to take. And it sounds like with your experience and your family traveling, you have that well under wraps. So,
yeah, still feels like there's a lot of things that I didn't really have to think about much as a kid. My dad was the one who took care of all that. So learning it for yourself is still a little bit different, but it's certainly a lot more flexible having had that background before.
And you have your work visa.
I got my work permit approved a week ago, and now I'm waiting on the visa to get approved as well.
Yeah, good. So as you get ready to launch here, there's going to be stones of remembrances or Ebenezer's or markers that have marked God's faithfulness. So when you have a rainy day over there and you're like, what am I doing here? The airplane's broke. I can't fly, whatever. What has God done for you to bring you this far? And what are you going to remember or hang on to?
Yeah, there's a couple stories that I love sharing just about seeing God's hand at work in directing me along this path. One of them that was a really unique story. My college experience. I told you that I did 2 years of training at SMAT. I also did 2 years in college. I made it really complicated, so I did my freshman year of college, and then sandwiched those 2 years at SMAT, and then had my senior year of college. And so this was the University of Northwestern St. Paul in Minnesota. And they had a program that allowed you to design your own major. And I mean, just that in itself was cool to see how God worked to be able to provide an opportunity for that. Because I wanted to get my degree. SMAT only is it's a trade school, so it just gives you your certificates as well as your certificate of completion, but it doesn't give a degree. And so as I was designing that major, my college advisor was an incredible mentor, encouragement. He was a man of God. He was also a pilot. And so as I'm designing this program to be able to allow me to get a degree in aviation.
Like a bachelor's, a BS in aviation.
he was the one who was helping me with it.
Oh, wow.
But the really unique thing, and this is where I really see God's hand of guidance, he was only in that position for 2 years. And it happened to be those 2 years that, not even consecutive, back to back, happened to be those 2 years that I was there as a student. So my freshman year was the first year he was in that position. My senior year was the second year he was in that position, and he had stepped down in between. He had picked it back up. So this man was probably
handpicked.
He was handpicked for sure. Probably the only reason that this program that I was shooting for actually even worked out in the first place.
Oh, wow.
So it was cool to see how God had this all in mind beforehand. He had directed the right man to that position for the times that I would be there.
Can't out-coordinate, out-plan God.
Yeah. Another one, as I think of particularly my transition to JAARS from SMAT, I had planned on getting to JAARS a year ago to be in the previous orientation class. But with some of the staff shortage at SMAT, I had felt God's direction to stay there for an extra year as an instructor. And come to find out, during that year, JAARS was going through a lot of internal changes and was beginning to offer the option of being a sending organization. And so I was able to come into JAARS not through the traditional Wycliffe route. And so that was just another thing that I saw after the fact. It was really hard in the moment having to decide to delay my plans to going overseas for another year. But to see that God was using that, and he was already ahead of things. He was paving the way for JAARS to be a sending organization, and for me to go directly through JAARS instead of under Wycliffe, and for JAARS to be able to have a little bit more of the infrastructure and the ability to do that. It was clear that it was him that was guiding the whole process. He knew that was going to be the case, and so
we don't always see or recognize when God's timing. Mm-hmm. We feel like, we're being stopped or blocked or slowed down, and God's like, no, I got this.
Yeah. And that was just from like looking at the JAARS side of things. There's the other side of that story too. Like, once I had decided to stay for an extra year at SMAT, I started helping out with the youth group at my church. And a couple months later, the youth pastor resigned and accepted a call to another church. And so I ended up stepping in as the assistant youth director, I guess you could say. And so that was another thing that I saw, like, God clearly kept me here for such a time as this to be able to help in the transition that my church was going through as well, and be there just long enough until they were able to get a new youth pastor.
It's amazing how so when I went through ICC, they wrote 3 words on the board. Mm-hmm. So if you remember these 3 words: flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. Yeah. I don't know if they still do that, but really you're prepared, your timeline and your preparedness is all about that. Mm-hmm. You're like, I'm going to stay to cover this, and then you end up being the youth pastor. That's really what day-to-day missions looks like and feels like. Mm-hmm. It's just being available. Steve Russell, our president, says that several times a day. Your greatest ability is your availability. Yeah. And wow, you've had an opportunity to demonstrate that already. Mm-hmm. You helped us visualize a little bit of what you're going to. Probably multiple houses close together in the highlands of PNG. There's going to be a school, mm-hmm. A clinic. But when you wake up in the morning, what do you go do? You're on this center and mm-hmm. the highlands, it's 70 degrees and mist on the mountaintops. What happens next? Yeah.
So typically for the life of a pilot, that might be a pretty early morning. I'll probably start by riding my motorcycle 2 miles to the airport.
Yeah. Safely riding your motorcycle.
Safely riding my motorcycle. Yep. and then after getting there, you're doing your pre-flight and getting ready to go fly to whatever route you've got for that day. Some of these remote villages. And so after doing most of your flying, oftentimes you end up being back maybe by lunchtime, just due to the wind and weather restrictions that are normal in that environment. And then finishing up the afternoon with paperwork from your flight, as well as any other office duties. Oftentimes the pilots are also assigned to some sort of administrative role or office job as well. Or if necessary, since I'm a pilot mechanic, helping out the maintenance team if there's any inspections or maintenance repairs that needs to be done. And
so you did mention that over the next few weeks, you'll get a Kodiak transition course. Explain to some of our listeners, how big is this? Is it smaller than a 737? Is it bigger than a Piper?
Oh, it feels way bigger than a 730. No. So it's a 10-seat airplane, weighs about 7,000 pounds, 45-foot wingspan. So, for those who are maybe familiar with the training aspect of things, it's maybe 50% bigger than a Cessna 172, which is a common training aircraft, but obviously has a lot more capability than that airplane. And so, it's designed for being able to carry a decent payload, even in and out of short runways, and be able to handle that slow flight as well. So unique airplane, very well equipped for the type of work that's going to be happening in PNG.
Will you be landing on pavement, a paved runway with a control tower? Or?
It's a little bit of everything in PNG. One of the frequent flights that they do, since Ukarumpa is not connected to the capital by any roads, they often fly to the capital, Port Moresby, whether it's to pick up mail, to pick up new missionaries that are coming to the base. So that flight happens pretty often.
That's where the international airport is.
That's where the international airport is, yeah. So that would be control tower.
So you're connected only by air to the international airport.
Yeah. And so then, that's the very controlled aviation environment that's kind of normal here in the States. But then you've got the other side where you're flying into these grass, really short, steep, mountainous airstrips into a village that, has no other means of staying connected with the rest of society.
So how did JAARS prepare you for that? Have you landed on a grass runway before?
Yeah, I'd say one of the highlights, and I guess maybe another one of those God moments as well, is during pre-field orientation we had our mountain week, which SMAT, when I was teaching there, we would take our students down to the same mountains that JAARS uses as well, but it was a little less advanced. So during JAARS PFO in Mountain Week, we were landing on some of these short, steep grass mountain airstrips. And so it was really cool. I remember as I was getting signed off to fly solo into Strawberry Ridge, which was one of the pinnacles. I remember just, praising God for coming full circle, seeing that everything he's prepared me for is now resulting in me being able to take off and land in some of the most remote places of the world.
Yeah. That mountain area you speak of is where Helene, the hurricane, really hit and impacted some of our friends up there. We've been going up there for over 50 years, and some of our first flights after the hurricane was to visit some of the folks at Strawberry Ridge and Farmer Brown, and who opens his hayfield up to us every year, which we're grateful for. That really is the pinnacle in the advanced training, because you're landing on a 14, 8, 10, 12, 14% upslope that you'll be flying in the mountains of Papua New Guinea here in a few weeks and months. Well, Caleb, we really appreciate you taking time in your busy schedule, and I know you have some Kodiak transition training coming up here. But what would you tell the young person at any age thinking of accepting the call to go into full-time overseas missions? What would you tell them? What advice, what word of counsel, encouragement would you leave with them?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is a Bible verse read recently. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builder labors in vain. And so for anybody who's thinking about pursuing God's call to missions, give it to the Lord, because really he's the one who's going to make your ministry fruitful.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we can do on our own.
It's his ministry. You can't work harder or do more if God's not in it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Caleb.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate your time. And Lord bless you on your journeys. And we can't wait to do a podcast with you on the flip side.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Uncharted podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, review, and share. Check back soon for more episodes.